יהיו לרצון אמרי פי ויון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי וגואלי לפניך. El Harachaman, O sweet God, you have taken a beloved one from us. We gather now and raise our voices in prayer to the source of life. We ask for comfort and strength, for the power to move forward in life and in celebration of life. Death has taken Lois from us. Our friends and loved ones, they grieve now in a darkened world. In their tears there is loneliness. In their sorrow they are searching for us. We need to be with them, to help them, to hear them, to console them. Lois's love united us all in life, and death cannot sever that. Her companionship shared along life's path. This continues now through the tenderness of memory, the gifts of her heart and mind that survive her. In this time of grief, we listen to and affirm the voice of our sacred scriptures that bring us an ever new message of God's nearness, our kinship, our joy, in sorrow, in life, and in death. I invite you to join with me, if you wish, in the recitation of the 23rd Psalm. We say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Amen. Ata imadi, thou art with me. That faith of the psalmist is echoed in the feelings I know are felt so deeply in the hearts and in the hopes of Lois's surviving family. They are grateful to each of you, those of you who are able to physically be here safely with us, and those who are watching now on live stream, and others who may be watching later. Ata imadi, you are with them, and there is such gratitude. Thank you. The family invites you to join them if you wish, and if you are vaccinated and wearing a mask and preparing with proper COVID-19 precautions, to join them at the Beachmont Country Club from 4 until 7 p.m. today for Shiva. If you are not vaccinated, the family and I advise you to get vaccinated and to offer your continued gestures of love and condolence, your remembrance of this remarkable life in the days and weeks to come. If you wish to honor Lois's beautiful generosity in life and now in her death, the family invites you, if you wish, to make a contribution to the Lois Marcus Women's Leadership Fund, care of our Jewish Federation of Cleveland. Dear friends, the poet Ephraim Rosenzweig writes, "How suddenly it comes, this last today. Tomorrow seems so far away when we are young, but then it is here, the end of now. There was a time when, if I could, I would have forced the door to yesterday to live again the joys of early love, to feel the thrust of time into tomorrow's endlessness. But I am older now, and know there is a last today, that the sun will not more rise to wash with light my clouded eyes. Tomorrow, who knows where I shall be? Perhaps in an eternity, where all time gone and yet to be are one." The words of this poem express a beautiful idea, a peaceful wish of those who die to know that the sun no longer rises for them, but rather brings light to the path of those who survive them. We so crave that to be true now, that when we die, our dearest survivors, especially the youngest in our families, will feel an energy pressing them forward into endless loving tomorrows. The words of this poem come to my lips this afternoon in this chapel because of the decent and humane and optimistic and forward-thinking human being we have come here to memorialize and celebrate. Our dear Lois Marcus died just days ago, still self-possessed, aware, and calm. Only a couple of weeks ago on New Year's Day at the corner of Belvoir and Fairmount, a playful Lois pointed in the direction of the intersection with Shelburne just to reminisce with Greg about the house there that used to have a decoration you might have remembered with Santa Claus's tush climbing into the upper story window. She didn't only have hindsight to look back either. No, Lois died with something special, something very special picked out to wear at her grandson's April wedding. There are many things that are in doubt in the universe in which we are living. No doubt nearness to a person whose cancer is taking them from our midst can make the most courageous of us tremble. But make no mistake, Lois Marcus discussed that outfit with her sisters. Eileen and Bobby, yours are going to need to be the eyes she borrows to look through that simcha drawing near for Alex and Samantha. You're going to need to be like the TV hosts at the Academy Awards at that wedding, commenting and interviewing your great nieces and nephews on what they're wearing and what their next project is. There's rarely been a day in your lives you haven't chatted with Lois about matters large and small and in between. Eileen, we had a chance to speak shortly after she died, and you talked about how you invested, you and your sisters have always been in one another, in your well-being, and in that of Bob, alav hashalom, his well-being, and Bobby's Dick, and Lois's Marty. As the remaining Wilkoff sisters, you have insight and affirmation and hope and lessons to carry from your parents, Bill and Jean. Even as a frozen cold descends on Cleveland later tonight and we bring your sister's physical remains to their final rest, you know that I am right. There are memories of your childhood home in the Lomond neighborhood in Shaker, confidences and hopes and aspirations she shared with you there that shine a light on your family still today, even on the dreams your and her loved ones desire now. I guess what I'm saying is it's winter now, but spring will come. Marty, our hearts ache with yours. This is your best girl, your date, your light, your low. She couldn't and shouldn't have had to suffer a day of indignity, and you know that was all that was left for her ahead. This was not what you had planned or what you had imagined. Who knew that when she came to sit next to you in the 11th grade in a class at Shaker Heights High School, that 72 years later, you'd have created such a vibrant and hopeful and incredible example of devotion for your kids and grandkids. The class was called World Survey, taught by Mrs. Shaka. And you two would joke as to whether she sat next to you to look at your class notes or you to look at hers. But the joke is askew because you've been taking cues from one another as long as you can remember remembering. The time you shared in high school, the time she spent first at Skidmore and then finishing college at Reserve, the visits she made, plenty visits to Penn. These launched a means for you to feel so deeply woven into one another's families. When Lois first came to your house and your mom, Edna, alav hashalom, used to serving 3 healthy guys, namely you and your brothers Herb and David, your meals, she placed a heaping pile of food in front of Lois larger than her torso. She hardly knew what to do. You reminisced with me yesterday with loving respect for her dad, Bill, his down-to-earth demeanor, his humility, his caring. You talked about her grandfather who had lived with his kids and granddaughters, and to whom and for whom you were in charge of reading the stocks from the Evening Cleveland Press. Your most confident days at that time in your relationship were the ones when your uncle in the car business sent you with a loaner of a Cadillac convertible to take her out for an afternoon and impress her. But when it came to the day you would come over to ask her to become your wife, you were somewhat more nervous. She knew that you had nothing to worry about, but your father-in-law Bill offered you a glass of wine to calm you down before you asked. She knew what you wanted and what she didn't want as well. She knew exactly to whom she was saying, yes, I'll marry you. She wanted to marry you. At Beachmont on June 25th, 1955, she knew Rabbi Silver was only going to wear a kippah like your dad wanted him to if your dad went out and bought him a kippah large enough to fit on his larger-than-life head. She also knew the moment you landed in Haiti as part of your honeymoon that she was not staying in Haiti. She had nothing but a bottle of Coke on that island before boarding back with you a flight to Miami to stay at the Fontainebleau. She dreamed with you of making the kind of life together that would feel as comforting and as elegant and as bright and as happy as the Fontainebleau made you together on that trip. Marty, yesterday when some final decisions had to be made by Jeffrey and Deborah, and Greg and Shelley and Lynn and Phil, and they stepped away from your dining room table, I had a great privilege of sitting next to you at a table with the people you and Lo admire most in the world. I saw your eyes sparkle as you watched Alex, Emily, and Eric, Adam, Claire, Natalie, and Jacob describe such a beautiful presence in their lives. They will, in a few moments, speak to you all, after their parents, too, standing here in solidarity at Lois's casket, offering words of tribute. But the person they were describing, her loyalty, her goodness, her presence, be it here in Cleveland or New York or wherever a grandchild was achieving anything on a football field, golf tournament, on a stage, on successive sweltering camp visiting days, wherever they were graduating from, I listened to the qualities they admire in you both, the way you've prioritized and the gratitude you exemplify, most especially the humility and integrity with which their yo-yo lived. And I could see in your eyes, Marty, you were boarding a plane off an island of grief. Let's call it Haiti. You were arriving shoulder to shoulder with your grandkids at the Fontainebleau of solace. That was Lois's way. She pointed in the direction of poise and solace and calm. That's who she was to nieces and nephews who cherished her, to sisters-in-law and brothers-in-law, the same hopeful and calm presence. I knew Lois of these last 12 years as a rabbi at her temple. I felt so touched by her graceful presence in our synagogue, her proud leadership in our Jewish Federation. I was buoyed by her personal outreach to me. I can see her handwriting vividly in my mind on the note she wrote to me to congratulate me when my son, Adam's age, became bar mitzvah. I can hear her voice telling me stories of survival from Alex's health struggles when I needed to be reminded of the courage it takes to fight illness. Mostly today, I remember the look in her eyes at family events like Adam's bar mitzvah. I can see her and Marty looking over Natalie's shoulder as I offered her blessings at her confirmation, or when Jacob would thunder from the shofar to herald in the presence of a new year together with Phil and Lynn, Shelley and Greg, Grandpa Marty and Yo-Yo. No matter what challenges we or our people here or in Israel have endured, on the 1st of Tishrei, a new year always begins. Just ask Jacob's shofar. Cantor Sager, who will sing and share some words today, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. Lois and Marty just showing up. They remind us what a privilege it is to serve the Jewish people and how influential grandparents can be on many people in their families. Our cantor Vladimir Lapin, with whom Lois had a steady Shabbat date on Zoom for the last year and a half, who could not be with us today, but sends his best, knows what it is as well to have both Marty and Lois pay rapt attention to prayers expressing hope for a better day to rise. Lynn, you and Phil, Greg, you and Shelley, Jeffrey and Deborah. In addition to everyone gathered here in this chapel, I want to assure you that the people in your lives watching live stream in New York and Cleveland and Florida and Park City, everywhere your family or friends live, they'll be listening to you today carefully. Short while into this service, you'll rise to this podium to talk about a mom who animated your life with stories of laughter and love. But we want you to know today and always there are hundreds of pairs of shoulders upon which to lean. Your cousins, your friends, your rabbis and cantors, near and far. We will walk the rest of this distance with you. Lynn, you never once encountered a person who met your mom who didn't tell you how kind and beautiful and affirming she was to them. You've been amazed to see how she has remained herself, saying what came to mind even as disease made her frail. It's clear to you all that Lois knew the score of the game. Shelley, you said that hard as it was to hear on your and Greg's 25th anniversary earlier this week, she told you to go and support Marty. She saw Jeffrey and said, I know why you're here. And she told as many of you as could be within her faint earshot that she wanted her steady guy, her Marty, to be held in your protection. She knew you could hear those words, Shelley, even on your anniversary, and hold them as instructions close to heart. That fits with the way the person has been described to me as a mother-in-law, and the way Lynn and Greg and Jeffrey knew her as a mom, the dedication to her children, being present for you, her sense of humor and grit and willingness to put up with Jeff's shenanigans. When Deborah first came to greet her, to meet her, and Lois thought the whole thing might be a big trick. The example she set to you of Greg of speaking positively of others, being generous with time and gifts and attention and knowledge and substance, and attentive to your interests no matter how different they were than your brother or sister. The desserts she made, especially her ice cream pie, Deborah remembers. That brightened so many occasions. The vacations you all took, especially on cruises, which nurtured ties between cousins who live at a distance but don't love at a distance. That constant connecting and giving and listening, that's her example, and that was in her bones. Her mom and her dad, and each of the Wilkoff sisters, it's their special home recipe. Marty says she was the perfect woman with whom to share his life. And though we will part with her essence, none of those humane and decent qualities we knew in Lois will be buried with her today. She won't be physically at your family's home on Woodburn Drive. But Adam, your grandpa's still going to need you to fix things there. And Claire and Natalie and Jacob, she's going to need you to hear her laugh with you and fell over you, and not in a bragging way, as Emily explains to me, but in a humble and understated and as unconditionally supportive, but a little bit bragging a way that a grandmother could feel about a granddaughter at Harvard Law School. Her understated, unconditionally supportive grandmothering, even the way she made herself smaller on the Zoom call so that you could be at the center of the screen. Eric, the fact that she set an example for you, how even sitting quietly with your grandpa could provide him companionship and affection. That ought to teach you that that's exactly what you need to do with him. And Alex, I'm telling you, man, this will be tough today. It'll be hard to be with your cousins at Mayfield Cemetery. Even harder when the temperatures drop and snow pounds this part of the continent later tomorrow. But I'm telling you all, spring will come. There is joy to be grabbed and holiness to feel. There's a wedding coming up. Go grab that joy. Grab that holiness and cherish it forever. Our sages and rabbis have long asked, where is holiness? What is it that our tradition calls Kedusha? One set of answers in a favorite Siddur of mine imitates the path that I think Lois Marcus lived by. It reads as follows. Where is holiness? There is holiness when we strive to be true to the best we know. Holiness when we are kind to someone who cannot be of service to us. There is holiness when we remember how important our families are to us. Holiness when we forget what divides us and remember what unites us. There is holiness when we are willing to be laughed at for what we believe. Holiness when we love truly, honestly, and unselfishly. There is holiness when we remember the lonely and bring cheer to those who suffer. Holiness when we share our bread, our ideas, and our joys. And there is holiness now as we gather and pray to the one who gave us a power to pray. Listen again to those core ideas: holiness in kindness and family, in unity, laughter, love, honesty, generosity, and sharing. These were the values Lois staked her life on. These are the eyes with which she viewed the world. Let's look through them. Let her and God into our hearts and be a source of comfort to us. We remember today an incredible human being, a devoted sister and daughter, Marty's best girl, your mom, your yo-yo, our Lois Marcus. Zichrona livracha. Her memory is already a blessing. Amen.
Dear friends, even while we had recently learned that Lois Marcus was ailing, even though we knew her condition had taken a turn, the news of her passing came as a shock. The entire progression from illness to death seemed impossibly swift, but that wasn't the source of our shock. The end came in stunning rapidity, but that wasn't it either. It wasn't that we felt she was unfairly deprived of a fullness of years. In fact, she lived a good, rich, wonderful life of more than the 80 years our tradition says are granted to us by reason of strength. Our shock had nothing to do with the external measures of lifespan or timing. Our shock came from our perception of Lois. She moved through this world with such grace, with such a timeless quality of elegance and gentility, with a classic beauty of appearance and an with a classic beauty of appearance and an eternal beauty of spirit, that she seemed ageless, undefined, and unrestricted by the bonds of time. She seemed a woman for all seasons, always relevant, appropriate, engaged in and excited by her loved ones, her many activities, her travels, her multifaceted and multidimensional life with her beloved Marty, her children, grandchildren, sisters, friends, and community. Our shock came with the realization that without her, the world seems a much poorer, less vibrant, more ordinary, sadder, coarse, and inferior place. It seems bereft of the warmth, love, compassion, goodness, and kindness that was as natural to her as breathing. It seems bereft of refinement, graciousness, femininity, and joy. She was exceedingly loving and accepting. She took such pleasure in the success of loved ones and friends alike. She was genuinely interested in our lives and our children, and just through the force of her presence and her personality, we all walked a bit taller, tried a bit harder, and appreciated more fully the blessings of our lives. I used to love to see her, and Marty, who was most often with her, whether at temple or any place else in the community. She always asked about my children and my well-being, and was unfailingly interested, supportive, and encouraging. And if she happened to comment on what I was wearing or how I looked, she had such exquisite taste that her good opinion made me feel as if I had won the lottery. Among the many memories that I have of Lois, Marty, they're remarkable children and outstanding grandchildren. There are two that I would share with you. At the time of my 25th anniversary at Fairmont Temple, a weekend of events was planned, culminating in a festive dinner. Lois, Eileen, and Bobby were asked to chair the dinner. When they accepted, I was absolutely thrilled and profoundly honored. I also did not ask a single question about their plans or offer any intrusive suggestions because I knew that it would be perfect. They were the best, and I will never forget the thrill of that night. I also had the privilege, as part of a Fairmont Temple auction package, to host Lois and Marty, Eileen and Bob, Zichrono Livracha, and Bobby and Dick in my home for what I believe, as I remember, it was a brunch. The conversation was free-flowing and the humor quite abundant. At one point, I asked a question, something to the effect of, does the relationship of the sisters impact your lives? The men erupted in laughter and unanimity. It was entirely clear that nothing could interfere with Lois, Eileen, and Bobby's relationship with each other. It was unique, exceedingly close, very special, and was a defining characteristic of all of their lives. Our hearts go out to Eileen and to Bobby, who have lost the partner, sister, and companion of their entire lives. As I thought about Lois, her radiance and beauty, both inside and out, the love and pride that she lavished upon her children and grandchildren, and the love of her life, her Marty, as well as the love she inspired in all of us, I thought of a text from the biblical book, The Song of Songs, set to music by the Israeli composer, Aleph Vet Baskovich. Behold my love so beautiful, like the dove, so light and fair, a hidden pool, a source of living waters with flowing streams from Lebanon. Such is our love for you alone. Hinach yafa, rayati, einayich yonim, einayich yonim, mibad litzamatech. Behold my love, so beautiful, like the dove, so light and fair, a hidden pool, a source of living waters, such is the stream from Lebanon. Such is our love for you alone.
I'm honored now to call on my colleague and friend and Lois's dear one, Rabbi Sharon Marcus, to offer some words of tribute and introduce the set of family eulogies.
Thank you, Rabbi Nosenchuk and Cantor Sager, for beautiful tributes. Eshet chayo mi imsa, rechok mi mikra. From Proverbs 31. A woman of valor who can find. She's more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm, all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. A woman of valor. I cannot think of a more appropriate metaphor to describe Lois Marcus. She was beautiful inside and out. Lois epitomized a woman who cared for her family, her community, with wisdom and kindness. When you walk into Aunt Lois and Uncle Marty's home, you feel enveloped in warmth, not because of the beauty of the decor or the attention to every detail. Both, of course, are a reflection of Lois's wonderful tastes. But most importantly, you're enfolded in the love of the beautiful family pictures, in the numerous photo albums and frames on the coffee table or covering the walls, from the weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, birthday and anniversary parties, and wonderful cruises and vacations. Many of us can think back to those memorable parties and celebrations that brought us together in such joy. Lois, dressed beautifully and looking stunning, smiling from ear to ear, that family and friends could come together for another milestone. And these happy memories will remain with us always. Lois was very involved in our community, but what mattered most to Lois was, as we heard, her family, her beloved children and grandchildren. She began the day by checking in with her children to see if they needed anything. Lois wanted an update on what the kids were doing and where they were going, and I promise that was not always easy to keep up with. Lois loved watching her family grow, welcoming her daughters-in-law, Debbie and Shelley, and her son-in-law, Phil, as her own children. And when the grandchildren began to bring home significant others, this brought her tremendous joy. Lois welcomed cousins, nieces, and nephews, and all their spouses into the family as one of her own. As we heard, it's impossible to think of Lois and not think of the sisters. My earliest memories of joining the family are of Lois, Eileen, and Bobby in Bobby's basement, working on invitations at celebrations, or lunching together regularly. They were constant companions, sisters who truly were each other's best friends. I will share a letter from Eileen in just a moment. It was also never a surprise to run into Marty and Lois with Cookie and Herb. They enjoyed going to cultural events together, such as the Cleveland Orchestra and Playhouse Square. They were very close. Lois was always dressed fashionably and loved shopping at Cookie M back in the day. Lois went everywhere and knew everyone. I quickly realized it was impossible to go anywhere in Cleveland without running into a relative. John and I were able to visit Aunt Lois and Uncle Marty this week. Marty reminisced how when they built their home, Lois insisted that the first floor be level, no steps. And this was long before the grandchildren came along. Lois was concerned that her parents, Jean and Bill, and in-laws Edna and Nate, would safely spend time in that house, and she took wonderful care of both sets of her parents. Lois opened her eyes for just a brief moment when I said goodbye on Wednesday. In that moment, she managed to smile and ask, "How are John and the girls?" It took all her strength. She quickly closed her eyes. But that was Lois, always inquiring about family, or her children's friends, families, anyone she met. Lois received unbelievable care. She always asked about people because it meant so much to her, and she truly meant it. Lois received unbelievable care these last few months. Her family wants to thank Linda O'Neill and her wonderful team from JFSA. They truly were loving caregivers. In the end, Lois was most concerned about you, Marty, her beloved companion since high school. And Marty, as Rabbi Nosenchuk said, we are all here for you. The two of you are a beautiful pair, sharing life and really living it to the very fullest. May Lois Marcus's name always be a blessing. Amen. I'd now like to share a letter that Eileen wrote to her sister. To my dear Lois, I was the luckiest girl in the world to be sandwiched between the two most amazing sisters. You and I grew up like Bobbsey twins. We shared a room until you went away to college, and then Bobby moved in with me. You always invited me to join you with your friends. The only time you got angry with me was when I borrow your clothes and get spots on them. In your whole life, you never got a spot on anything. The older we got, the closer the three of us became. We were like the Three Musketeers. We were known as the sisters, and our special relationship was enviable. We just loved being together. We were in business together for 27 years and had so much fun and never even got into an argument. Our family holiday dinners were the best. Linda and her family joined us, and we would take turns hosting these events. We each made our own special dishes. Everybody loved your carrot pudding and your ice cream cake. After dinner, the kids would play, and we would gab until our husbands would yank us away. You were the perfect child, the perfect sister, the perfect daughter, wife, mother, mother-in-law, grandmother. You were the epitome of a lady. You were kind, gracious, sweet, generous, and understated. You had the best taste, and you were never boastful, except about your 7 grandchildren who you adored. I feel today like I felt like I did when I was 10 years old in the 4th grade, and you were leaving Ludlow School to go to junior high. I remember thinking, how will I ever get along without you? And that's how I feel today. How will I get along without you? So rest in peace, my sweet sister. I will always cherish our special relationship, and you will live in my heart forever. With all my love, your sister, Eileen. Thank you, Eileen. Beautiful. I'd now like to invite Lois's children, Jeffrey, Greg, and Lynn, to come forward to share some personal words about their mother. And then Lois's grandchildren, all the grandchildren, Alex, Emily, Eric, Adam, Claire, Jacob, and Natalie will share thoughts of their dear grandmother, fondly known as Yo-Yo.
On behalf of Greg and Lynn, I'd like to tell you a few stories about our dear, wonderful mother. As I'm sure you know, family, friends, and service to the Jewish community were major parts of her life. But there was another major part of her life that you may not have been aware of, her hair. Mom attended her weekly beauty shop appointments as religiously as she attended Fairmont Temple High Holiday services or Severance Hall concerts with Aunt Cookie and Uncle Herb. Until COVID shut down all the beauty salons in 2020, the last time Mom had washed her own hair was in 1952. Yes, 70 years ago, as a freshman at Skidmore College. Wherever she traveled in the world, her hair always looked great, from the mountains of Maine to the depths of the Grand Canyon, from the jungles of Costa Rica to the chaotic streets of Hanoi. That's because Mom always found a clean enough beauty salon wherever she went. She did this in so many locations that my wife Debbie told her she should write the Jewish Woman's Guide to Beauty Salons Around the World. Sure to be a bestseller at Hadassah meetings and Line of Judah conferences. The reason her hair always looked so great, I think, was that she never, ever got it wet. Even on the hottest summer days, she would not go in the pool at Beachmont, except during rest period when the kids were out of the pool, so there was no risk of getting splashed. And then she only went in the water up to her waist. Even on the Maid of the Mist under Niagara Falls, she managed to keep her head dry on vacation with Dad, Greg, Lynn, and me. We even tried bribing our kids with toys to make Grandma get her hair wet, but no one ever succeeded. However, there was one time when she got her hair wet, and none of us will ever forget it, and fortunately, it was captured in a photo. We were on a cruise with the extended Wilkoff family and took a shore excursion to Dunn's River Falls in Jamaica. A guide led us on a climb to the base of the falls. When we got there, the water was coming down strong, and the pool below the falls was much deeper than it looked. Mom had no way out, and her hair got soaked. But in typical fashion, she took the drenching with good humor and grace. But needless to say, as soon as we got back to the ship, she ran straight for the beauty salon. She was such a good customer of Dominic's beauty salon for decades that Dominic should have given our dad a piece of his business. When Mom would schlep one of us on her weekly appointments at Dominic's, Dominic himself would entertain us while Mom got her hair done and then sat under that big cone-shaped dryer for 3 hours. I couldn't stand those seemingly interminable days at the beauty shop, so I would occasionally ask Mom why she had to get her hair done so often. She always said to me, "Would you prefer that I look ugly?" I usually shrugged and responded with something like, "Oh, well, I guess not," and then ended up spending the next Friday at Dominic's again. And of course, she never looked ugly. In fact, she always looked beautiful and took a lot of time and care in choosing her clothes, shoes, purses, and jewelry. Although before buying anything new, she often needed the approval of Eileen and Bobby, and later, Sherry, too. Mom had specific outfits for special occasions, and I'm not referring just to events like New Year's Eve at Oakwood or the Jewelry Olympics at a Line of Judah convention. She even had a special outfit for cleaning the garage. I can see it now. It was a powder blue capri pants inspired by Mary Tyler Moore on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and a gingham top from the Donna Reed Show. She also had an outfit to wear on our annual trips to Cedar Point, where the only ride she was not scared to go on was the tram from the parking lot. We learned how important clothes were to Mom when we go to Indians games. She was always loyal to the home team unless the visiting team had nicer uniforms. And when she was invited to sit in Uncle Bob's first row seats at the ballpark, she made sure to wear a nice outfit and get her hair done because she could be seen on TV every time a right-handed hitter was at bat. Yes, Mom always looked so well put together, especially her clothes. Much of that was thanks to having a sister-in-law in the business. She loved to go to Cookie's store to pick out the latest styles. But she also had another passion, and that was horses. She started riding as a young girl at Red Raider Day Camp, and then went away to Camp Hiawatha in Maine. When her trunk arrived at camp before she did, the counselors opened it, and they couldn't understand how a girl with such small clothes could have such huge saddle shoes. We took memorable annual summer vacations at Atwood Lake Lodge, where Mom got all of us riding horses and having a great time. Mom's love of horses even turned into a summer job at Thistledown Racetrack. When my kids heard that, they couldn't believe it, that Grandma Lois would work at a racetrack. And I jokingly say she did it to try to meet guys, and they knew that wasn't true at all. She and Eileen handled the weekly payroll, working there for their Uncle Mort, who was the accountant for the track. And they loved it. They would dine in the clubhouse and go down to the paddock to see the horses and go out to the parking lot where some of their high school friends were valet parking attendants. But Mom's career in high finance did not end with that summer job at the racetrack. When cash flow at Medical Records Corporation was sluggish, she stepped up to do collections work for the company. And despite her quiet, well-mannered demeanor, she was very effective at bringing in the bucks under the supervision of Uncle Herb. She was so effective that one customer even complained to our dad about that lady making collection calls for your company. Perhaps this success in the business world was what prompted her to open her own business with Bobby and Eileen, Celebrations. For years, as many of you know, much of Jewish Cleveland bought invitations for their simchas and their stationery from the Sisters of Celebrations in the luxurious confines of Bobby's basement. Everyone flocked there for the excellent taste and judgment of the sisters and for Bobby's tremendous talent as an artist and a calligrapher. Celebrations was such a profitable business that it caused an unexpected problem: income taxes. These three sophisticated sisters of commerce were shocked to learn that they were expected to pay taxes on their net profits. What to do? They consulted with Dick, Bob, and Marty and came up with a plan for the next year. Eat and drink all the profits, so there would be no net income left to pay taxes on. So they made a standing reservation for lunch at Beachmont every day. Before they even sat down, their favorite waiter, Chico, had delivered 3 iced teas to their table with extra ice. They would discuss the business of Celebrations long enough to justify their lunch as a tax-deductible business expense, and then move on to more important topics, like what they were wearing, what others were wearing, who was getting divorced, and other gossip. We could go on with stories about our mom for many, many hours. But it's important to remember that our parents were together for 72 years and married for 66, as Rabbi Nosenchuk told you. Their love and respect for each other has set such an incredible example for all of us, our spouses, and our children. We promise to continue the beautiful legacy Dad and Mom created together. We love you both so much. Mom, you will live in our hearts forever and ever. Thank you.
Throughout the years, our grandma has had many names and titles: Lois, Lo, sister, mom, aunt, cousin, friend, and most importantly, Yo-Yo. Just like us, many of you knew our grandma as Yo-Yo. You might be wondering how she got this unique name. As I was learning to talk, I always heard Grandpa Marty, Aunt Eileen, and Aunt Bobby calling her Lo. Since I couldn't pronounce my L's, I started calling her Yo, which later turned into Yo-Yo. She became Yo-Yo to our teachers at Hawken and a second grandma and Yo-Yo to so many of our friends. We are all so fortunate to have grown up with Yo-Yo as our grandma. Yo-Yo instilled in us so many important values and taught us valuable life lessons, some of which we want to share with you today.
As you've clearly heard, the importance of family was a top priority for Yo-Yo. With Grandpa Marty, Yo-Yo built a strong and thriving family tree, 3 kids and 7 grandchildren, serving as an example of how to prioritize family and treat others well. And as many of you know, Yo-Yo was related to practically everyone in Cleveland, and she knew each and every one of them really well and intimately. You could really never go to a restaurant without running into a relative, and that was a really beautiful thing, the relationships that she cultivated with everyone. And talking about close relationships, Yo-Yo maintained an extremely close relationship with her sisters. They worked together at celebrations, they had lunch almost daily, and would pass countless hours at night catching up on the phone. And of course, you can't talk about Yo-Yo without talking about Grandpa Marty. They had a fairy tale relationship that each of us could only dream of having one day for the past 72 years, ever since Yo-Yo wore that white sweater to Shaker Heights High School and sat next to him in their World Survey class in 1949. Overall, Yo-Yo showed constant love, support, and loyalty in all of her relationships, and we strive to emulate that model as we enter adulthood and start our own families.
Yo-Yo and Grandpa Marty not only passed down their love for travel to all of us, but they also took us on so many amazing family trips. Whether it was a family cruise, a trip to Niagara Falls, or a bar bat mitzvah trip to London. On these trips, Yo-Yo was willing to do whatever would make us happy, whether that meant risking her getting her hair wet on the Maid of the Mist in Niagara Falls or going to the London Dungeon haunted house with Alex on his bar mitzvah trip to England. Regardless of where we were or what we were doing, the focus was always on family. Annual December cruises brought us together from across the country and ensured that we built strong bonds as cousins. While the girls usually relaxed by the pool or played bingo with Yo-Yo, the boys, Jacob and Eric, could often be found in the arcade maxing out their arcade allowance. But every night, what was most important was that the 15 of us all came together for dinner, followed by often a trip to the casino for some blackjack lessons with Grandpa Marty, and Yo-Yo there by his side cheering us on.
Yo-Yo never missed any of our activities or events. She definitely set a record when she managed to visit all of us at 4 different camps across Maine in one weekend during camp visiting day. She supported us in any weather and any location, from the fields and courts at Hawken, to the pool at Orange, to school auditoriums in New York. Even in the rain, wind, or snow, when few other people were in attendance, we could always look into the stands and see Yo-Yo. As many of you know, Yo-Yo had a standing Friday afternoon hair appointment at the beauty shop for over 60 years. But as soon as it conflicted with my Friday night football games, she moved the appointment in an instant because she wouldn't miss out on anything important to her grandchildren.
Speaking of hair, which Yo-Yo did a lot, her weekly salon appointment, first with Toby and then with Jen, was one of her favorite things. We all knew not to call or schedule anything with Yo-Yo on Friday afternoons because that was her time at the beauty shop. It's fitting that she married the only man who still has a full head of black hair at the age of 88. She also admired our hair. She was quick to compliment the things that she liked, and one of the very last things she said just a few days ago was how handsome Eric looked with his new haircut. But even for someone who valued her hair this much, when Yo-Yo learned that she had to get chemo and would lose her precious locks, she did not hesitate. Although her hair always meant so much to her, she was willing to do all she could to spend more time with us.
Yo-Yo was always put together from her head to her toes. In addition to her hair, she loved shoes. That's despite the fact that she wore a 9.5 narrow, which could make it difficult to find her size. Unfortunately, she passed down her long, narrow feet to Claire and me. We truly have massive shoes to fill. She loved taking all of us shopping. As particular as she was about her own style, she would support us even when our tastes diverged with hers. She'd happily buy me jeans with rips in them, if that's what I said I wanted. She once bought Alex a sweatshirt from Bloomingdale's that was so distressed that a guy on the subway asked if he needed money for food. Even when Eric and Alex both forgot their luggage at Newark Airport, she was happy to buy them an entire new wardrobe as soon as they landed in Sarasota. And we relished watching her laugh until she cried whenever that story was retold for years to come.
Yo-Yo was the ultimate host and put together wonderful holiday meals while always keeping her cool. She knew what each of us liked and made sure that we had it. From carrot pudding for Jacob, to cocktail wieners for Eric and Emily, to shells for Adam and Natalie, to ice cream pie for me, to Melba toast for Alex, even when coming home from Cedar Point at 2 a.m. In addition to getting to eat these dishes, we're lucky that Yo-Yo passed down many recipes of hers and Grandma Jean's to us. Yo-Yo's cooking was primarily for Jewish holidays, which were always big occasions in our family. We all loved being together, whether to celebrate Passover, Rosh Hashanah, or Hanukkah, and we're grateful to have had her example of bringing family together on these important occasions.
Bringing family together might have been Yo-Yo's biggest passion, even more than hair or shoes or shopping. And that shows through in the way that she treated each member of her family. For example, a lot of you might know that Natalie got straight A's at Tulane. I know Cantor Sager knows. That's because while on a Zoom that Cantor Sager was leading, Yo-Yo thought she was on mute, and she got a call, and she proudly exclaimed, "Marty, Natalie got straight A's at Tulane." And so now all of Jewish Cleveland knows that. She used to take Adam mini golfing as another example, and Adam is now an avid golfer. When he was 6, he didn't know all of the intricacies of the game, so he would be very excited when at the end he had a higher score, and she was always nice enough to congratulate him on winning and reward him with ice cream. Even in much smaller ways than that, Yo-Yo showed us how to interact with one another and with other folks throughout the world in a way that is so worth emulating. She valued family highly. She was kind to everyone, from close relatives to nurses that she countered for just minutes or hours. And she showed unconditional warmth and support to the people closest to her. The love that she gave us directly and the pride that she radiated outward are things that we will all always treasure and that we're so lucky to have had.
I invite you now to all rise for the El Mali prayer.
El Mali Rachamim Shochein במרומים המצאי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כי זו רקיע מזהירים את נשמת Liebe Lea, Bat Belvel, Vizecher, Shalcha, Leolama. Bal Rachamim, Yastireh Besetek Navav, Leolamim, Vizru, et nishmata Adonai unachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Lois Marcus, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.